Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Hey, everybody.
So we both have a couple areas that are passionate to both of us. Some of you know I was a kid actor. I gave that up for the lucrative field of journalism. We're both passionate.
I'm still a kid actor.
We're both passionate about technology. You've been working at the intersection of technology for quite a while. I mean, I Hit Record came out a long time ago.
Yep.
So it's fair to say you're not a technophobe. You're not afraid of technology.
Love technology.
At the same time, you have some real concerns about where AI seems to be headed.
Yeah.
Talk about what excites you and what worries you.
Oh, wow. Well, like you said, with Hit Record, I was always really excited about sort of where technology and creativity can intersect. And throughout history, new technology has always challenged artists and inspired artists to do new great things and sort of defined how people can express themselves. I'm a big believer in that old adage, the medium is the message, the old Marshall McLuhan or Neil Postman saying that you can try to divorce what you're saying and the technology you're using to say it, but in fact, they intertwine and they impact each other kind of irrevocably. And I absolutely believe in the potential for this new technology that's arriving to enhance creativity, to allow people to do amazing creative things that they've never done before. But I also think that if we go down the path of least resistance and we just do sort of the default thing, that the downsides might outweigh the upsides when it comes to human creativity.
And so, I mean, to really set the stage, and I think we've seen it through some of the conversation, but I mean, basically AI has gotten so good that it's possible, and this is both the good and the bad, it's possible if you have one piece of the idea, you have a script, you can make a movie without any other humans. Mm-hmm. If you are a cinematographer, you can use virtual actors.
Sure.
So some of that sounds really exciting.
You know what it reminds me of is when I was a little kid, we would make movies, with, at that time, my family's like...
Giant camcorder.
Yeah,
I had one.
Camcorder. And I remember this thing we used to say where we would shoot something and it would be kind of not quite right. And we'd have this sort of fantasy of like, well, my dad knows how to edit, I think. So my dad will fix it later. Let's just keep going. So now people are going to actually really have that figure in their lives where like a 10-year-old can be making a movie and having a great time and be like, oh, well, I really wanted it more to look like this. And then it can. That's great. Like, I think that can be wonderful. At the same time, and I say this as a parent with kids who are creative and I love getting in the weeds of their creative process, if you do it for them too much, you can watch it sap their energy and their creativity. Like, I'll give you an example. My kid loves to make music with a computer, but I don't let him use the Apple Loops, the thing where you can just be like, oh, Apple, make a hip hop beat for me or make a rock beat for me, and it just does it. I don't let him use those tools. I say, like, no, you can make a rock beat, you can make a hip hop beat. And the reason why is because then what's the point of it just doing it for him? The joy and also, by the way, the muscle building of making a beat comes from doing it. So I think there's a delicate balance to strike between letting the technology do it for you and, using your own muscles to be creative.
So one piece is how much labor are we putting in, how much of it is the thing. Mm-hmm. But then there's another piece that's super important to you as an actor, which is how much of other human endeavors went into the technology. Yes. One of the reasons that Google tool that we saw is so good at making movies, they won't tell us exactly what it's been trained on, but it's been trained on a lot of movies that were made.
Yes.
It might have been your movie. If they went back far enough, it might have been my movie.
Yeah.
It was lots of people's movies.
Or anything that anybody just happened to upload to YouTube or whatever. Yeah.
And no consent, no compensation.
Yes.
Those are phrases we hear a lot. Why is it important? Mm-hmm. Besides, again, you wanting to get nice residuals so that you don't have to come do.
Yeah, sure. So, look, on the one hand, I'd love to be like a pure punk rock artist and be like, art isn't about the money. I'm going to do it anyway. You don't need to pay me. And there's something kind of beautiful about that. But on the other hand, what really happens if you don't pay artists is not a punk rock thing. What happens is all the biggest corporate giants just own everything and control everything. And I think if you need to adhere to the basic principle that when humans contribute something, when humans create something, when humans have an idea or they do anything that then makes money, there's economic value in that. Because if you take this to the extreme and you go along with the principle that like, oh no, the data that we're using to train these AI models, the humans that produce that data, they own 0% of the economic value, and we tech companies, we should own 100% of the economic value. Where does that lead in the future? In the future, you get to a place where humans don't have any economic incentive to strive, to be excellent, to be creative, to have ideas, especially as the technology proliferates more and more throughout our economy. It's actually much bigger than just entertainment and content creation.
And I want to point out, we're pretty close to that reality. We are like, it's 11:59 on the clock. Basically, right now there's no mechanism in most AI mediums for the artists to give consent or be compensated. There's a bunch of lawsuits going through the courts.
Yep.
I've heard a lot of people say it's a coin flip.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, in the most recent call for proposals on how we should handle AI, a bunch of these tech companies have asked for explicit permission, explicitly guaranteed in law, that they can train on whatever they want. Similar discussion happening in the UK. How important is it that people get involved in this conversation?
This is where I would want to really broaden it out to beyond art and entertainment. I know I come from Hollywood, and I understand why people might say like, well, Hollywood, actors, I don't know, do we really have to worry about them? But this same dynamic, this same technology of, hey, let's take data produced by humans, feed it into these models, and monetize it, that's going to replace so many jobs. And if we go by the principle that all those humans that produced all that data don't deserve any of the economic value, what's that going to mean for the whole economy? I mean, and this is frankly how a lot of the leaders in the AI world talk about it. They talk about, we are building a technology that will produce all of the economic value, and humans will no longer produce any economic value, so we'll put them on UBI. We'll put them on a centralized dole. And it strikes me as so ironic because these folks are like, they're enthusiastic capitalists. And now they're advocating that the economy worked basically the way that, Stalinist USSR worked, where humans have this sort of flat thing with no incentive to excel or stand out or do anything, with any ingenuity, because human contributions have no economic value, and they just get a UBI? Like, that doesn't sound like a beautiful world or like a good economy or a good, life for humanity to me.
And so I want to dive into two of the points you made. One is that this isn't really just about actors or Hollywood or creators in general, that the technology exists today that you can take what you contributed to one film that you got paid well for, but you can use that to make infinite films. We don't need, in fact, you'd be just as young and beautiful today. We can make 50 years worth of films, but under the current system, maybe not pay you for any of that. But that same principle really applies to so much of the workforce, that especially as the technology of capturing that data gets better and better, you might work at a job, you might be a great salesperson. They spend a year watching what makes you a great salesperson, and then they're like, great, the sales AI has gotten really good, bye. And so it isn't just Hollywood. And in fact, Hollywood, it's most visible. You have one of the loudest megaphones and one of the strongest unions, and it's still happening to you all.
It certainly is. And I don't know if Hollywood is going to be able to get its act together and try to demand better terms. I mean, the truth is all the stuff was already stolen. And the big tech companies are now coming and asking for forgiveness, having done it. And it's just moving so fast, and the technology is honestly so impressive that I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of get away with that gambit. I hate to be a pessimist, but I do agree with you. I don't think it bodes well, and I don't know, maybe it'll take some kind of really noticeable and drastic impact on the larger workforce for people to start sitting up and saying like, oh wait, we can't descend into this new feudalism where all the economic value is captured by these, few big tech companies.
So I'm going to posit that not only is Hollywood emblematic of the problem, but also within the professional arts might also be part of the solution. It's interesting. I was talking to Jeffrey Katzenberg this morning and suggesting, so maybe we're kind of in the Napster moment before we had something like the iTunes store.
Yep.
It took Napster distributing it for free for the industry to rethink, well, what they really value isn't necessarily the free. I mean, everyone loves getting things for free, but what they valued was being able to get any song whenever you want, and that some segment of the population is significant is willing to pay for it. And it's evolved since. It's gone from paid downloads to subscription music. Hasn't been great for the artists, but it has had a model. And there's a model in the music industry where the person who wrote the song gets paid. Anyone can cover it, but the person who wrote it still gets paid. The owner of the music gets paid, the singer gets paid.
There are systems to distribute those payments.
Similarly, you film a movie, there's tons of people involved, and somehow we manage to compensate all of them. Do you have some hope that something like that could exist, and what do you think it takes to bring that about?
There would have to be enough pressure to make that happen. There's certainly not a business incentive. It only costs the big businesses money to pay the people whose value they're monetizing. They will need to be made to do that. But I completely agree with you. I mean, you mentioned this new video generation model from Google, VO, right? VO3. I mean, probably, they won't say, but probably that's trained on a bunch of people's YouTube videos. They probably could build some system. They're already compensating lots of YouTubers who are uploading their videos, and they're compensating the various musicians who aren't even on the same account. But if someone uses a video, the system can sense it. If someone's video uses a piece of music, the system can sense it and be like, oh, we need to compensate this musician.
And it took lawsuits to get there.
And it did. That's exactly right.
The music labels suing YouTube. Oh, suddenly they have a technology. Suddenly they can compensate. And it's interesting. We have seen glimmers of this. So in the stock photo world, there's a lot of image generation engines out there that don't compensate the artists. But Adobe, with Firefly, if you contribute to Adobe stock, you also get contributed to how much it helps their Firefly image creators. So it does seem like it can be done. Well, it takes pressure, it takes a demand, it takes a requirement.
So, and if I could, let's just try to paint two hypothetical pictures of what YouTube looks like in the future, all right? In one future, if you take what we've seen with VO3 and you take that down the road a little bit, now you've got a video generation tool that can be hooked up to an optimizer, a machine learning algorithm that can optimize for any key performance indicator, any metric they want to optimize for, probably ad revenue in the end, right? This is what YouTube already does, but the way that YouTube does it is it has a finite set of videos in its database, and the machine learning algorithm statistically calculates which video is the one to serve next that's most likely to optimize for ad revenue. Take that now, VO3. It's not looking at a finite number of videos deciding what it's going to serve. Now it can just generate anything. And it can tune what it serves you to its optimizer for ad revenue. And all the things we've seen happen with social media and YouTube and TikTok, et cetera, all the extremism, all the damaging side effects we've seen from hooking media up to an optimizer, it becomes that like crazy, right? Now, and by the way, all the economic value belongs to this optimizer, these sort of just AI-generated videos, because we're saying that the humans whose data went into this video don't deserve anything.
So I just want to make sure the audience is getting this, because it's a super important point. So basically, in the historic YouTube world, they still had an algorithm that said, you watch this video. We think the next best way to keep you watching is to show this video and then that video. They were all videos made by real human beings, but the algorithm was really helping maximize attention. Facebook works exactly the same way.
YouTube pays the humans and Facebook doesn't, right?
Facebook also, that feed is things they know will keep your attention. Now, and Facebook has explicitly said this is the world they want to create. Today, if you go to Facebook, you're much less likely to see your friends' posts. You're much more likely now to see a post the algorithm knows you'll like. And to be honest, they got me pegged. They show me Lego videos. They show me things that make me happy. Genuinely do enjoy the experience, even though I wish I was seeing my friends. But where they said they're going next, and they've already started this, is content that's created just for me. And to your point, they're going to have an infinite supply of that.
Yep.
And so suddenly, it's kind of Ready Player One, right?
Yes. And where you get is pretty dystopian. You get people hooked up to these bliss machines that are so addictive, they just scroll and scroll and scroll, and there's no incentive now to participate or be creative because you're just getting the perfect thing fed to you over and over again. But now, consider an alternative where YouTube, yeah, it can generate these videos, but it's compensating the people whose data was used to make these videos. Now,
aren't we still just hooked up to the bliss machine? You're just getting
if there's an incentive for you to make a video, because there's an economic incentive that you could get paid if you make a good video that helps to train the videos that people like. To me, it feels different if you've set up a market dynamic, an incentive for people to be creative, versus the world where there is no such incentive because we've gone and said that humans don't generate economic value anymore.
So I want to bring it back to what we can do now.
Yeah.
The government is trying to decide this right now. The Trump administration put out a call for comments.
Yeah.
Not surprisingly, the tech companies said, we want all the data.
Yeah.
A bunch of artists said no. I don't think it's a terribly good sign that the head of the Copyright Office was forced out. Would you agree?
The head of the Copyright Office issued like a 100-page report saying I don't think probably most of this is fair use. Yeah, and then the next day they were removed from office. All right.
So I don't know about you. I'd encourage you read this report from the Copyright Office. It was the head of the Copyright Office's last act was to put out this, and it's a nuanced position. It doesn't say nothing is free use.
Right.
It just doesn't say everything is free use.
And I agree with that, by the way. No one should own the English language, for example. So if data that was used to teach these models to use English in a natural way, I'm not necessarily saying that people should be paid. I think you can find a reasonable structure to figure out what's fair and where humans should be paid and where the tech companies should be making money. I'm not against the tech companies. I think it's actually great what they are doing, and there is a bright future if we can set up the right systems and the right incentives.
So you may not know this, the audience does. I have a magic wand that I sometimes give to guests and let them create the world they want.
Oh, I see.
I gave it to Governor Hochul this morning, but I managed to get it back in exchange for some blue cheese dressing.
Wow, sweet.
So I'm going to give you, for the last minute, you have the magic wand.
Yeah.
How do we get to the world that you pointed to that's better and avoid the world that's not?
I mean, let's stick with the specific example we just had. A gargantuan force like YouTube, if they set the example and said, hey, we want to be a platform where there still is an incentive for all these awesome creators who have made our platform what it is for the last 2 decades to keep creating. And yes, we're going to use videos to train AI-generated AI models that will generate videos, but we're going to track whose contributions went into that training data, and we're going to make this a place where human creativity is still valued. If Google would step up and do that, maybe others would follow suit.
Well, I think you all get a sense for why I was so eager to have Joseph Gordon-Levitt join us. Ladies and gentlemen, Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Thanks. Good to see you. Thank you, everybody.